So, welcome on my behalf as well. My name is Ville Kyrki. I'm a professor in intelligent machines in Aalto University and leader of the autonomous AI research program in the Finnish Center for AI FKI. And it's really nice to be able to give the opening presentation in this seminar. Uh, I thought of talking about and setting a big picture context by talking about whether I see AI as hyperreality in drones. So let's begin with drones. So drones, uh, also known as male bees, are kind of a specific type of bee which have a very specific role in the bee community. But to talk about bees in general, what can bees do? Bees are able to move in their environment with remarkable agility. They're able to memorize the location of good flowers. They're able to return there. They're able to learn if a particular flower runs out of nectar. And they're able to communicate with other bees about the positions, about good food sources. So there are actually quite many cognitive functions that bees are able to do. So what do we really mean by cognition and intelligence? So in particular, cognition in animals provides functions for example, perception and attention, such as bees perceiving flowers by their color, or perceiving other bees, uh, detecting their surroundings by odor, following, and so on and so forth. Cognition also provides functions for spatial cognition and navigation, being able to know where you are, being able to follow particular routes, being able to navigate in the environment, to find, for example, food sources, find back to your nest, and so on. Cognition depends often on memory. For example, there are many studies showing both short-term and long-term memory. For example, that bees can retain some memories over their entire lifetime about potential, for example, which flowers are good potential food sources. Furthermore, cognition provides ways to act, especially about how to perform motions, how to move in efficient ways, many other ways of how to act in the environment. And finally, cognition is central also for communication. So we typically think that communication is actually kind of relatively high level cognition. So when we go forward, how does this animal cognition really work? Typically, we can think of as different levels of cognition. These use different mechanisms. In the most primitive cognition, we are talking about stimulus response cycles, sensing and immediate reacting. So adaptation to your environment or conditions by just automatically reacting. Many of those things are reflex-like actions that can be even inborn. So they are not built during the lifetime. And often those kind of reactive behaviors, we don't necessarily always think of as cognitive functions, even though they may provide us a lot with many different functions that affect and allow us to adapt to our surroundings and other people, for example, when we're talking about humans. We also have a slightly higher level cognition that's often termed behavior. So there are two basic mechanisms for learning behaviors: classical conditioning, which is the Pavlov's experiment, where you associate stimulus and response in a particular way. So basically, you learn that certain thing should be followed by another thing. And this is something that has been shown to happen in very low-level animals as well. We also have operant conditioning, where, for example, training dogs by showing or giving them rewards. So rewarding particular behaviors strengthens those behaviors, and we can, in that way, for example, train animals, but also that if surroundings train the animals. For example, getting more food from a particular flower trains the bee to more often go to that flower. And finally, we have the level of reasoning problem solving. So this has been over 100 years ago already shown that, for example, some apes, such as chimpanzees, are able to really solve problems without training. So, for example, use tools, stack boxes in order to reach high trees, and so on and so forth. So basically, being able to plan sequences of actions and sequences of functions which are not possible through or which haven't been trained before, for example, using operant condition. So all these functions also exist, and all these mechanisms exist in animals. So, but when we talk about artificial intelligence and autonomous systems, what are those doing? AI in the autonomous systems provides functions for perception of self and surroundings, planning of movement and actions, and control of execution of those, plus communications and many other functions. So actually, they're not too different from the functions we see in animals. When we look at the approaches and methods we used to build AI in autonomous systems, they're actually mostly about the classical conditioning, which is quite primitive mechanism in the terms that supervised learning, that is learning to pair particular stimuli with particular response, is the main approach. So we are learning from labeled data. For example, human telling, here is a picture of a cat, here is a picture of a dog, or this is what you should do in a particular situation. And then memorize those examples and generalize from those examples. Autonomous systems also use reinforcement learning, which is extremely similar to operant condition. Basically, rewarding systems for particular behaviors and learning through exploring and exploiting the learned knowledge. So even though when we talk about autonomous systems, we are not necessarily talking about human-like cognition at all, but we are talking about mechanisms that do also appear in humans and similar mechanisms that appear in animals. So when we're looking at these approaches, and especially supervised learning, there are particular challenges of building AI in drones and many other small autonomous systems. A particular thing for the classical conditioning and supervised learning is the data availability. We have to show the pictures of the cats. We have to have correct actions for particular situations demonstrated in order to memorize the correct behaviors and correct responses. And data bottleneck is the central issue for supervised learning. So today we will see later on some approaches how to approach that as well. The other very significant problem is the onboard computation resources. So even though if bees are very small and very tiny insects compared to our current drones, they are able to, in their nervous system, actually encapsulate many cognitive functions. So the type of processing that happens in vertebrates, the nervous system of vertebrates, is actually sufficient. And even though we actually know that the size of bee cognition or the bee brain is extremely small compared to the current AI systems, they are able to still achieve remarkable feats. So at the moment, one of the bottlenecks with the current AI trend is massive data. And this is something where we may have to find potentially other approaches in order to somehow cope with the problem of limited onboard computation resources we typically have in drones. So to kind of look at the similar reason, this is actually what we can do with learning in autonomous systems. So this is not very different from bees being able to agilely move in a forest environment, move in a very planned manner and without collisions in a rather fast ways. So how to make that happen? This is an example from a few years ago from Switzerland about how we can actually learn to provide with the current neural network models combined with traditional control engineering, such examples. So in this example, we see one of the typical examples of how to cope with the data bottleneck, which is actually learning in simulation. So the system learns to navigate in completely simulated forest environments, and it's able to then apply that behavior in real life. So moreover, it's able to really learn to do the behavior only using a visual sensor or just using a few cameras to do it. So we have clearly seen approaches that are able to kind of, by memorization, learning these kind of quite complex behaviors. In this case, the behavior is to plan the future path for a limited time horizon. And once a particular path is chosen, then using traditional control engineering to and model predict control to execute those actions. So here we see another way, which is that actually the AI methods, in this case, the sensory motor processing and short-term planning, are used only for paths where we don't have other approaches, and we don't see here the trend of massive AI completely also controlling the machines. Because typically that would actually require excessive computation resources for this problem. So these kind of things typically have a runtime of some tens of minutes with the onboard supply, power supply. So kind of to end with a couple of points of view, I try to kind of give you the big picture that cognition is actually a multi-level issue. We have very simple things and very simple behaviors, sensing, acting, responses, stimulus response cycles that are able to create in an environment quite complex behaviors. Moreover, what we have is that in the higher levels, we're able to have more reasoning capabilities. On the other hand, the more higher the level, the more catastrophic the potential failures can be. So typically, if we allow lots of, let's say, freedom for the AI systems, the potential results of the failures can be way more drastic. So in that sense, artificial intelligence in some cases may result in artificial stupidity in the systems. Although by far, I'd say that by now, or until now, the human stupidity has been able to trump artificial stupidity by far. So what I'd ask you to, or the perspective I'd like to give you also for after this seminar is to be critical. Many impressive things are possible with the current AI, but AI methods are just tools, and they're not the holy grail for drones either, as they are not the holy grail for any other application. Fortunately, today, we have many nice speakers that are able to actually show you what AI is in reality able to do in drones. So I'm looking forward to the next presentations to also learn myself about how AI can be used in real life in drones. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.